Okay, so Be'ezrat Hashem, what we're going to try and do today is we're going to develop a glossary of terms that are rooted in Kabbalah, meaning to say a language that comes from the Zohar HaKadosh, and then through the Kadmoinim and the Rishonim, and then these terms were all collected into an encyclopedia written by Rav Moshe Cordovaro, the Ramak, called Pardes Rimonim. And then after the Ramak comes along the Arizal, and he refines the language and he gives us exactly what the language of Kabbalah is, the language of how God creates the world and ultimately how we relate to Hashem. The terms that the Arizal gave us are real concepts. We don't have a grasp of what they are. We just know that the Arizal, by way of receiving prophecy, and by way of receiving a direct revelation from Hashem through studying with Eliyahu Hanavi, he gave us terms and conditions that were already in the Zohar HaKadosh. Not everybody was studying the Arizal, and not everybody is going to study the Arizal. But what happened was that the Arizal comes along and he teaches us how to enter back into Gan Eden. He gives us a language, how to eat from the Eitz HaChaim again, how to be aware of the power of our neshama, of what we are, what we do, how every moment is everything in the world. And the Arizal gives us access back into Gan Eden. But we know that there's a Nahar Hayotzim Eden, there's a river that flows forth from Gan Eden. Lahashko Sagan, to enable us to taste the light of Gan Eden. What's a Gan? What's the garden that the Nahar was dripping into? So the Zohar HaKadosh says that a Gan also comes from the language of Gnus, something that's ugly, something that's difficult, struggle, this world. And the Zohar HaKadosh says that Hayoshevet Baganim Chaverim Makshivim, those who sit in the gardens with friends who are listening, Al Tikra Ganim Ella Gnus. Don't read it as gardens, but rather read it as Gnus, as that which is ugly, that which is difficult to look at. And the Zohar says, Hayoshvim biyachad begnusa da alma. Those who sit together in the gnus of the world, in that cheapened nature of the world. So Nahar Hayoitze mi Eden lahashkoitze sagan means that Hashem sent a river forth from Gan Eden in order to allow the Gan to grow again. What's the Gan? The Gan is our world. The Gan is our neshama when it gets stuck and it forgets about Hashem, and we get overcome with taiva, and we get overcome with kina and kavod and all of the different things that take us out of our world. We fall into all types of stuckness. And the Arizal comes along. Hashem reveals the light of the Arizal, which is the river that flows forth from Gan Eden, to enable us to come alive again. So that the gnus, the difficulty of being human, having a neshama and having a body, having tumah and having tahara, having a yetzer hatov and a yetzer hara, and all of the struggle of what it means to be a human being, that we now have a river flowing forth from the Eitz HaChaim telling us, again, how to return back to calmness, how to re-enter Gan Eden. But we know that the Torah tells us that there's a river that flows forth from Gan Eden, but immediately it also tells us V'yispardu la'arba roshim, that river immediately splinters off into 4 separate rivers. And we said that these 4 rivers were the 4 tzaddikim who came into the world a generation or 2 after the Arizal, who gave us a new way of understanding the language of the Arizal. They said, the job is not necessarily to be a Kabbalist. The job is to understand the ideas that Kabbalah gives us, but to live with them, to apply them to our lives, to feel better in this world as a result of those ideas, to do mitzvahs with more intensity, to learn more about what Emunah means. And so when we learn the writings of the 4 rivers, which are the Rashash, Rav Shalom Sharabi, that's still more focused on Kabbalah. But even that's focused on practical avoda. Then we have the Ramchal and the Gra and the Baal Shem Tov. All of them took the language of Kabbalah and they drew it down so that it can become medicine for the neshama in this world. When we study these ideas, when a person is learning Pnimiyut Torah, it's not necessarily because we feel that we can be mikubalim, but it's because we're searching for the medicine that Hashem has given into the world through his tzaddikim. And so when a person learns the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, or a person learns the Gra, Nefesh HaChaim, a person learns the writings of the Ramchal, you encounter phrases, you encounter terms or concepts that are used very freely in the writings of Hasidus and the Gra, but these ideas are really rooted in the Kabbalah of the Arizal. Because the Baal Shem Tov and the Gra and the Ramchal and the Rashash, they were commentaries on the Arizal. They were teaching us how to live with the teachings of the Arizal so that we don't have to get complicated and we don't have to get stuck. But we do have to know the language. We have to understand that when the Svarim that we're learning for Avodas Hashem, to get stronger, to give ourselves chizuk, to give our kehillah chizuk, to give our families chizuk, we have to know what these terms mean. When a person learns a Kedushas Levi, they are going to come across terms that are directly from Kabbalah. When a person learns Nefesh HaChaim, most of it is terms from Kabbalah. When a person learns the Biur HaGra on Mishlei, when a person learns Mesilas Yesharim, the writings of Rav Dessler, the writings of Rav Hutner, the writings of the Maharal, any Sefer Chasidus, Rav Tzadok, Rabbi Nachman, Chabad, Chasidus, all of it is built upon the principles that the Arizal gave us. And so what I want to try and do is I want to go over very briefly kind of definitions of certain ideas so that when we dig down deeper into the Sfarim and we learn Chasidus and we learn the Gra and we learn the Ramchal, we have a familiarity. We're more familiar with the terms. We're not afraid of them. We're not afraid of the terms because more often than not, when a person hears frightening ideas that are beyond them, talking about Sviros or this or that, so people usually say, well, that's beyond me. I don't know anything. I don't know what any of that means. But that's not an excuse. You have to know what that means. Why? Because the Baal Shem Tov's teachings are based on that, and the Gro's teachings are based on that, and the Ramchal's teachings are based on that, and Rav Hutner's teachings are based on that, and Rav Tzadok's teachings are based on that. The Meshech Chochmah's teachings are based on that. There's no escaping the Kabbalah of the Arizal. So we no longer have the freedom to say, oh, I don't know what those terms are. We have to understand what they are. And so what we're going to do is develop a dictionary so that we know what these terms mean. That being said, what must be acknowledged at the outset is that what you're going to hear from me is my personal understanding of these ideas as I have understood them and learned them and studied them, but as they are funneled and interpreted through my own mind and heart. And so the words that I'm going to choose to describe what these concepts are built on many, many sources, but ultimately it's the way that I'm personally reading the sources. And there are many, many ways to understand these terms. And so if there's something that doesn't seem like, oh, that's an idea I could connect with, it doesn't mean that the Kabbalah idea that I'm describing is the problem. I'm the problem, right? It's my interpretation of the ideas. But so we're going to start from the very beginning. We're going to start from the beginning. The first concept that we have to understand is Ein-Sof. Ein-Sof, infinite, that which is without end, without limitation. We don't talk about Ein-Sof. Ein-Sof is not what we talk about. We talk about Or Ein-Sof. We talk about the light of the infinite, which we'll get to next. But Ein-Sof itself, the infinite itself, the essence of God, so to say, we have no relationship to it. We cannot name it. We can't measure it. We can't say what it is. We can't say what it's not. It's always beyond the mind's capacity to understand or grasp. The moment that we think we've grasped it means that we're in a mistaken path of thinking, because the essence of God, so to say, is so infinite and so beyond understanding that there's nothing that can be said, not a yes and not a no. The Zohar HaKadosh says with regards to Ein Sof, with regards to the essence of God, Leis machshava tfisa beklal. There is no thought that has the ability to grasp it. This is the first principle at the heart of Kabbalah and Pnimiyas HaTorah, that we are not talking about the essence of God. The term, the essence of God, is almost just like in quotation marks because you can't convey it in words. If you can convey it in words, you've already limited something. We know absolutely nothing about the essence of God other than the fact that by definition it is necessary and that it exists in an unchanging way, as the Rambam describes in the beginning of Yesodei HaTorah with regards to what emes is. The truth of emes is that it is completely independent of anything else. It exists no matter what. It's not dependent on existence. It's not dependent on creation. It's not dependent on being known. And we have no relationship to the essence of God. Now, it's very important to keep in mind, the essence of God, so to say, is everywhere. And everything exists within that place. And there's no place devoid of the essence of God. And he fills all worlds and he surrounds all worlds. When we talk about not being able to speak about it, it means that we're not allowed to try and grasp it. It exists. Of course, the essence of God exists. It's all that exists. Everything else is illusion. But we do not have the ability to grasp it in our thoughts or in our hearts. And anytime that we think that we've come to grasp it, we have to remember the most important principle of all, which is what Chazal say, that Kedoshim Tihiyu, you must be holy. You must become whole. And then Chazal say, Efshar Kamoni, is it possible to become as holy as God? Obviously not. Talmud Lomar, Kedushasi lemale me kedushasechem. My holiness will always transcend your holiness. No matter what level of godliness I think I've grasped, I have never even begun to grasp the essence of God, so to say. That's the first principle. The first principle is that we do not talk about the essence of God. Everything that we are talking about is God's revelations. Once Hashem decided to reveal himself to us, once Hashem decided to reveal himself in a way that we can have a relationship with him, that's a level below Ein-Sof itself. That's what we refer to as Or Ein-Sof. When you look at Kabala, it describes that at the beginning of creation, before the creation of the world was filled with Or Ein-Sof, with the light of the infinite. Now, the light of the infinite is not identifiable with the infinite. It's an expression of the infinite, just as light is an extension beyond the source of light, that the light in the room is not the source of light. The source of light is luminary from whence the light emerges. But the vision of light is already a revelation. And all of the tzaddikim say that Or Ein-Sof, the infinite light that existed prior to the creation of the world, that is already something that Hashem has revealed to us. It's not Hashem himself. Now, obviously, when we attach ourselves to the Or Ein-Sof, to the light that Hashem has revealed, the Ratzon of Hashem, we're still always connected to the essence of Hashem. But the light of Hashem's infinitude is not identifiable with the essence of Hashem. And so we have two very important stages that represent the beginning. There's Ein-Sof de lo kaima l'she'ela. There's the element of the infinite of Hashem, which I have no relationship to. And then there's Or Ein-Sof de kaima l'she'ela. Then there's the revelation of Hashem's infinite light, which I do have a relationship with. Now, why is this distinction so important? This distinction is fundamentally important for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the Leshem Shabo V'Achlom, Rav Shlomo Elyashiv, writes in a letter to Rav Naftali Hertz, the Baal of the Siddur Hagra, and he says, when Chazal say it's forbidden to contemplate that which is before, ma lifnim u'ma la'achor, it's an isser because what I'm doing when I pretend that I can think about the essence of God is that I'm separating myself from the essence of God. Because when I'm studying something, or when I'm thinking about something, or when I'm metapel with something, if I'm studying a sugya, So there's me and there's the sugya that I'm discussing. To understand something means that there's me and there's the thing that I'm understanding. Now, if the thing that I'm trying to understand is the essence of God, then anytime I'm pretending that I could understand it, I'm already showing that I'm outside of it. And if I'm showing that I'm outside of it, then that's already kfira. That's heresy, because I'm pretending that the infinite nature of God is not there. And therefore, it's actually forbidden to even begin to try and contemplate the essence of God. And like we said before from the Leshem, we learn this from Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't learn this from anybody else. Had Shlomo HaMelech or David HaMelech, L'dugma, asked Hashem to see his essence, and Hashem said to them, no, you can't see my essence. No human being can see me and live. So then we may have thought, well, David and Shlomo, as big of a tzaddik as they were, nevertheless, they had some difficult stages in their lives. And maybe it's because of not being good enough or not being holy enough that they weren't able to see it. But the Havamina would be that a real perfect person or someone close to perfection like Moshe, he might be able to see it. The Leshem says, Hashem answers Moshe and says, Ki lo yireni ha'adam v'chai, no one is going to see me and live, in order to teach us that this is not because we're not smart enough or good enough, but in the language of the Leshem, Ki chokhu lefi chuke habriya, she'i efshar shehanivra yasig esaboira. That it's a law that is built into the very fabric of existence, that something that is created can never truly grasp the creator. Creator is always there, but we can't come back to a place of knowing the essence of the creator. Now, with regards to the language of Ein-Sof, the Ramami Panau asks a question. He says, why don't we call it Ein Tachlis? Yes, Tzaddik. I think you need to unmute. I'm sorry. Just say there, it's still muted, so I don't hear you. This is part of the cheshvan, chashmal part, the silent part.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good.
Yeah,
That's good. So I'm asking is, if we are not allowed to ask because we're separating, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he said, I want to see you, that's the biggest separation could be.
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. How could Moshe Rabbeinu have had the Havamina to ask? Aleph is like the Leshem is saying, it was a teaching moment for all of Klal Yisrael. That Moshe Rabbeinu had to learn that Kedushasi l'mala mi kedusha seichem, that even for Moshe, Kedushasi l'mala mi kedusha seichem, that there's always a Havamina, that once I come to the top of the level, that I've reached the highest level. And then the maskana is that no, you haven't reached the highest level. You've actually reached the bottom of the next level. And so Moshe Rabbeinu was experiencing the top of the levels that he was experiencing. And it's specifically there that Hashem has to remind him and teach him that no, in truth, whatever level you grasp, there are always infinite levels above and beyond it. Like we see in Parshas Lech Lecha, the Baal Shem Tov says this about Avraham Avinu, that es halech lefanai ve'eheyat tamim. Tmimus means wholeness. But right after that, we find v'hu yoshev pesach ha'ohel, that he's sitting at the opening of the gate. And what the Baal Shem Tov says is as follows, that Hashem created 50 gates of understanding, nun sha'arei bina, the kulam nasnu l'Moshe chasar achas. And all of them were given over to Moshe Rabbeinu except for the 50th gate. But what is this 50th gate, says the Baal Shem Tov? The 50th gate is what happens when you experience a level of tamimut, of shleimus, and then you realize that, wow, there's another 50 gates, and another 50 gates, and another 50 gates. So after Avram Avinu experiences tamimut, or shleimus, the next revelation is V'hu Yoshev Pesach HaOhel. He's sitting at the very beginning, not because he went all the way back down to where he started, but because it's a new starting point. That every ceiling in a room is also the floor of the room above it. And so on the one hand, I come to the highest level, but at the next moment, I have to realize that I've come to the highest level only in relationship to the levels that I'm coming from. But in relationship to where I'm going to, there's infinite levels of growth. This has to remain fundamentally true at every stage of the process, even after existence is redeemed. And we go into the Elef HaShvi'i. And then from there to the Elef HaShmini and Chi and Asiri. There is never a time where creation is equal to the Creator. The Creator is always one step ahead of us. And any sense that we have that we've reached the essence of the Creator is only so that we realize that, no, I still have to climb even higher. The Ramami Panau asks, why don't we call it Ein Rashis? Why don't we call it Ein Rashis? Why are we referring to Hashem as Ein-Sof, without end? And he says something very, very important. That because in truth, there is a beginning. There was a Tzimtzum Ritzonit. Hashem decided that he wanted to be known to existence. But without that decision, Hashem wouldn't be known. There's an impossibility of knowing God. Only because Hashem decided that he wanted to be known, and he revealed himself in the sense of Ein-Sof, so now we have the ability to relate to God. So we call it Ein-Sof without end, and not Ein Rashis, because in truth there was a beginning. Hashem decided to reveal this possibility of being able to have a relationship with him. And so these two levels that we see are Ein-Sof, which we don't have a relationship with. It's everywhere revealed, but the Mikubalim are never talking about that. Never. No Sefer is ever talking about that. And then once Hashem decided that he wanted a world, the first thing he did was reveal something called Or Ein-Sof. Or Ein-Sof. Now, what's Or Ein-Sof? The Ramchal tells us that the metaphor of Or, of light, being used to describe the way that we relate to Hashem's revelation, is because we can only work with the tools that we have. And as physicalized creatures, our thought is rooted and based on what we see, what we feel, what we've studied, what we've experienced. And all of that is measurable. If I could see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, experience it, it's limited. And so when it comes to trying to find the proper metaphor, the proper mashal for how to understand God, we use the language of Or. Because of all of the physical entities that we experience in this world, Or has the most Ein Bo Mamish. It doesn't weigh anything. It doesn't weigh anything, and therefore it was used as the metaphor. It's meant to represent the fact that there is a hidden light of Hashem's presence, an awareness of Hashem's presence, the presence of Hashem, that is all-encompassing. That all of existence exists within this Or Ein-Sof. That the first thing that Hashem revealed was the fact that he's everywhere, up, up, down, down, right, left, all around, here, there, everywhere. That's where it can be found. The infinite light was everywhere. It filled all possible space. There was no possibility of there anything else existing because it was everywhere revealed. This was the first Gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gilui of the Or Ein-Sof was a level of revelation of Hashem that made it impossible for there to be anything else in existence. Now, this infinite light of Hashem is fundamentally connected to the essence of Hashem, but it's not identifiable with the essence of Hashem. And Chaver, like I told you, I'm giving my piece, and I'm going into the very important places. These are not ideas that necessarily get spoken about explicitly in the introductory svarim to Kabbalah, but without this, we're lost. Because what's the problem? What's the problem if I begin to think that I'm talking about God himself? When I start talking about limitation and worlds and Tzimtzum and Svirot and the way Hashem reveals himself, so I'm already a kofar because I'm taking something limited and finite and I'm applying it into an infinite space. And the Ravid in the Hakdama to his biur on Sefer Yetzirah says that there is no greater heresy than that. Someone who comes and conceives of the absolute simple unity of God to be complicated and have to have parts and to have differences. And so it's very important that we know that whatever we're talking about in the world of Kabbalah, in Pnimius HaTorah, we no longer have to be so afraid of making this delicate mistake, because we're never talking about God himself. We're talking about God's revelations. And once we're talking about God's revelations, so it's a revelation. It's not the essence itself, but it's a revelation of the essence. So the fact that the first stage that we're talking about is Or Ein-Sof, the infinite light that Hashem reveals, it protects us. It keeps us safe within Pnimius HaTorah. Any questions on this so far?
Yeah, how do we see the Or? We are the Or. The world is the Or.
It's a good shaila because it's a great question, because that's going to bring us to our next phrase. So the next phrase is, the Arizal says that, so once Hashem reveals this infinite light, there was no possibility of anything else. There was no possibility of a world. There was no possibility of existence, of souls, of people, of Torah and mitzvos, because the Or Ein Sof was everywhere, and there was no space for there to be anything else. But once we're talking about Hashem revealing himself, so then we have the understanding that Hashem wants to reveal himself. Hashem wants to create the world. And there's many, many reasons given by the tzaddikim as to why Hashem, so to speak, wanted to create the world. Now, the want of Hashem is not by Atzmus Yisbarach, it's by the Or Ein Sof. Obviously, the desire of Hashem is rooted in the essence of God, but what we grasp is the infinite light. And so there's various reasons given. The famous reason that the Arizal brings in the beginning of Eitz Chaim, he gives two reasons. One is that the infinite wants to bestow goodness upon creatures. He wants to share his goodness and share his light. And he wants Bnei Yisrael to enjoy and lehisaneg al Hashem. And therefore, in order to reveal goodness, in order to reveal the ultimate good, Hashem had to make a space for existence and creation that seems separate from God. And through that separation, we come to return back closer to God and earn our relationship. And that's going to be the ultimate good. Because if Hashem were to just reveal himself fully and just give us good without us earning good, so then theoretically, based on statements in Chazal, we would be ashamed to look Hashem in the face because we didn't earn it. And therefore, we wouldn't be able to enjoy that goodness in its full measure. And it would have been something referred to as Nehema de Kisufa, a bread of shame. That man de achel ma shalav didei bosh le'istakel ba'ape, as the Zohar says. Someone who partakes from that which is not theirs, they are embarrassed to look in the face of the person giving it to them. The Ramchal, obviously, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato in all of his Svarim, and the Baal HaSulam after him, took this idea and they ran with it. They said, this is the most important purpose of the creation of the world, that Hashem wants to reveal goodness. We see this explicitly. Everybody knows this from the first parak in Mesilas Yesharim, one of the deepest books that the Ramchal ever wrote towards the end of his life when he was under tremendous, tremendous redifus. He gave us Mesilas Yesharim, a pathway to Ruach HaKodesh, 26 chapters corresponding to the gematria of the Shem Havaya. And in the first chapter, the Ramchal states very clearly that what is the chova of an Adam in this world? Lehis aneg al Hashem. To experience the pleasure of being close to God. Hashem wants us to enjoy. Hashem wants us to feel good with our amunah and our mitzvos and our Torah. In Hasidus, the idea is different. The reason that Hashem created the world was Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu lihiyos lo dira b'tachtonim, which is a statement from Chazal in Vayikra Rabbah, that Hashem wanted to reveal his presence in the lowest place imaginable. Because if I can come to see Hashem's presence in the lowest place imaginable, then I'm going to have a deep understanding of how great Hashem is. And the goodness that will come about when I experience Hashem in that place will be all the more greater. The Arizal brings another statement as well, which is that Hashem is shalem b'chol minei shlemus. Hashem, the infinite light, has to be whole in all matters of wholeness. He has all of these names and all of these kinuyim. Shem Havai is the Shem Ha'etzem, but there's Elokim, and there's Kel, and there's Kel Shakai, and there's Hashem Tzivakos, and there's Elokim Tzivakos, and there's Eheke, and there's Adnus. There's all of these different names. But a name is only necessary when there's somebody else that can call me by my name. And in order for Hashem to bring out all of his wholeness, all of his potential, he had to create a space that could receive it. So these three reasons are all connected, obviously. But once we're talking about Or Ein-Sof, Hashem desired the creation of the world. But there was a problem now, because the Or Ein-Sof was saturating everything, and there was no world, there was no place for the world to take place. And so here's where the Arizal introduces a concept that's already in Chazal, called Tzimtzum. So we have Ein-Sof, Or Ein-Sof, and now we're entering into Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is Hashem hiding his infinite light so that something else can come into existence. Tzimtzum means a contraction. Tzimtzum also means a hyper-focus on a singular point. Tzamsem es shchinaso ben bade ha'aron. Hashem took all of his infinite light and condensed it, so to say, into a tiny point. And he placed it into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Or like the Sugi and Erchin discusses, Efshar letzamsem o i-efshar letzamsem. If there are two goats that are born theoretically at the same exact moment, is it possible for the human mind to discern which one came out first in order to ensure that it's the Bechor? So we see in Chazal's discussion of what Tzimtzum means, it means, are we able to focus in so clearly that we're able to understand the pinpoint of it all? So Tzimtzum is reducing all of the Or Ein-Sof into a tiny, tiny point so that Hashem could reveal himself in this world. So Tzimtzum is when Hashem decides that he wants to create the world and he conceals his light. He conceals his light. He doesn't conceal himself. His essence is everywhere, but he conceals his light. And so Tzimtzum is the contraction of that infinite light that saturated and filled all possible space in order to create something referred to as the Chalal HaPanui, the vacant space. Once Hashem is Mitzamsem Or Ein-Sof, he pushes it to the side and he conceals it and he hides it. What appears then is going to be the Shoresh of Bria, the Chalal HaPanui, the void, or that original vacuum that Hashem creates by way of the Tzimtzum of his infinite light, is ultimately going to be the place in which all of existence unfolds. With me so far?
Yes.
So we have Ein-Sof, which we don't talk about. Then we have the first revelation, which is Or Ein-Sof, which saturated all of the possible spaces to the degree that creation wasn't possible, but it was already a step towards creation. Then we have the Tzimtzum of the Or Ein-Sof, which is the removal of that infinite light so that there can be the possibility of worlds. And the purpose of worlds is so that we can have the possibility of neshamos being in the world. And so after the Tzimtzum, we have this concealment of divine light. Now, again, like I said, the Tzimtzum is a very, very important sugya. It's one of the most important sugyos in the world. Because on the one hand, it becomes that place of argument or apparent argumentation between the Baal Shem Tov and the school of the Vilna Gaon. And historically speaking, there's been confusion about how we understand this concept of Tzimtzum. What does it mean when we say that Hashem removed his light? Was it actual removal of light, or was it just a concealment of light? And historically speaking, people have assumed that the Vilna Gaon in his base medrash, God forbid, felt that the Tzimtzum was an actual removal of light, and that the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim felt that the Tzimtzum was not an actual removal, but just a concealment of light. That the Vilna Gaon and his school was attributed the opinion of Tzimtzum kipshuto. It was literal, Hashem removed his light. And in the Baal Shem Tov school, it was seen as Tzimtzum lo kipshuto. Hashem didn't really remove his light, he concealed his light. My nafkamina, that according to the theoretical opinion that says Tzimtzum was actual and Hashem removed his light, so then when I'm doing Torah and mitzvos, I'm drawing back down the light of God back into an existence where it wasn't there a moment ago. And if Tzimtzum eino kipshuto, and it wasn't an actual removal, and just a concealment and a he'elem, so then when I draw godliness back into mitziut through Torah and mitzvos, and dveikus and machshava, I'm not drawing something in that wasn't there. I'm revealing something that was always there, but it was hidden. Higalena. The difference between drawing something down, a hamshacha, and a gilui, is that drawing something down implies that it wasn't there a moment before, and it wouldn't be there if I didn't draw it down. He'elem and concealment means that it was always there, I just have to reveal it. And I have to reveal that it's always been there. Now, in truth, there's so much to say about this, but this notion of a machlokas is a symptom of galus haTorah. It's the fact that there's a concept of galus haTorah, and there needs to be machlokas and apparent disagreement throughout history so that we can come and understand the truth of the matter. But the Talmidim of the Gra, the Nefesh HaChaim, Rav Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, Rav Menachem Mendel of Shklov, the Leshem Shovav HaChaloma, Rav Yitzchak Kahana, all of the Talmidim of the Gra, Kuli Alma Lo Pligi, that Tzimtzum is Lav Kipshuto. And even if we want to say that Tzimtzum is Kipshuto, then it means something else, but it doesn't mean the removal of godliness. There's no emptiness whatsoever. Everything is filled with godliness. And so both camps understand the Tzimtzum to really represent this idea that Hashem is concealing himself. That infinite light is now nignaz. That light that Hashem created at the beginning of the world was so bright that Adam Arishon was able to see me sofa olam ad sofo, but it had to be concealed, it had to be hidden. And so the infinite light is hidden, and that's what creates the halal hapanui, the vacant space. Now this vacant space is the place in which all worlds are eventually going to take place.
Can you explain it? Just what's the nafkamina if we draw the light, or if we just reveal the light in terms of our learning, our connection, our doing mitzvot?
Bevadai. This, I think, is where the ikar nafkamina is. Because let's say I'm operating with the false perspective that says that Hashem removed his light, whatever that might mean, because we know that existence can't continue to exist if Hashem's light was there. But let's say somehow, some way, spooky action at a distance, there was something called hashgacha pratit, and the ratzon Hashem was machayed metziut without the essence of God being there. Let's say, right? Let's pretend that that could be an opinion. So then anytime a person doesn't feel connected, anytime a person experiences concealment, anytime a person feels distant from Hashem, so then I have to think, Taka, I'm distant from Hashem. Taka, Hashem's not with me in this place. There's a difficulty that theoretically Hashem is not there with me. And that's a davar mafchid ma'od. Person can't live with that notion. Gilui means that it's always there. I'm just revealing that it was hidden. I didn't know it. I wasn't aware of it. But now I come to realize that it was always there. When a person lives with this perspective that it's always there, it just might not be revealed yet, even when I feel distant, even when I feel disconnected, even when I feel that I fall into wherever I fall into, that doesn't mean that I stop being connected to God. That doesn't mean that God stops being connected to me. And that has a tremendous nafkamina on the psyche of Avodas Hashem. Because the notion of I'm either in or I'm out, I'm good or I'm bad, leads, like we've spoken about, to a very unhealthy kind of kina, taiva, and kavod orientation of Avodas Hashem. That I need to be frum and connected, because if I'm not frum and connected, then I'm not with God, God forbid. then God is not with me in my life. Then I live in a world that's absent from God. But Rahman al-Islam, my Haidas, there's nothing in existence that's absent from godliness. There's no darkness in the world that doesn't have the presence of God in it.
I mean, even the Gra didn't mean exactly that.
Bivadai, the Gra did not mean exactly that. No, like I said, the Gra and all of his Talmidim agree that it's lo kipshuto. The fact that we claim and that people are still arguing that the Gra meant kipshuto is just simply wrong. It's wrong. There's nuance. He's not saying the same exact thing that Hasidus was saying, but kuli alma lo pligi, that the presence of God is always there.
We see it from Elazar ben Dordaya. It was a very low place, and Hashem came to speak to him through that lady, to that woman. So he didn't bring it. He didn't bring the light.
It was there. It was already there. Exactly right. Exactly right. Rav Elazar ben Dordaya in Hasidus is used as the raya for this type of avodas Hashem of mima'amakim karasicha Hashem. That yesh koina olamoi b'sha'achas, that no matter where a person is, it's obviously better to live with a healthy revelation of Hashem through Torah and mitzvos and goodness and good midos. But there's an element called b'makom shebalei tshuva omdim tzadikim gemurim einam yicholim la'amod, because in the urgency of the Baal Tshuva who feels far from God, the urgency to reveal that Hashem is also there with them draws down an even deeper revelation of godliness. To the degree that Rabbi Yehuda Anasi hears this and he says, wow, I've learned something. He's my Rebbe. I've learned that even there, you can draw the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down. Even there. Leval yidach mimenu nidach. There is nothing that doesn't have a rectification. Nothing. There's a nitzutz of light everywhere. And so Tzimtzum means the removal of the infinite, or not the removal, the concealment of the infinite light, so that there can be eventual creation. And with this nakud, I want to go into the last two nakudos, and then we'll continue with there's a lot of terms and conditions. That'll be the next year as well, where we'll be mashlim it. We had Ein-Sof, which we have no relationship to. Then Hashem decided to reveal Or Ein-Sof, which saturated all of existence, and there was no room for anything else. But Hashem wanted to bestow goodness to us, and he wanted to be known by us, and he wanted to reveal all of himself, specifically in the place of concealment. And therefore Hashem was mitzamsim himself. He contracted and concealed his light so that it appeared that there was no godliness there. And in that chalal hapanui, in that empty space, where now there could be existence that appears to be other than godliness, because there's been a separation made, there's been a tzimtzum, like the parent who walks away, like when a mother weans their child off of nursing, where for a moment, the child a moment before had lived in a world where everything was ever present and available, and now it feels that it doesn't have it. B'yom higamal es Yitzchak. There's a separation. The child is now in a world that doesn't necessarily appear to be fundamentally rooted in the infinite. What happens then is Hashem draws down and reveals a ray of the original infinite light that was there before the Tzimtzum back into the Chalal HaPanui. Back into the Chalal HaPanui, so that the infinite light was there, and then it was removed so that space could emerge. And then in order for that space to have a real relationship with Hashem, Hashem drew the Kav or Ein-Sof back down into the Chalal HaPanui, a measured ray of infinite light that wouldn't overwhelm the space that was just created. It was overwhelmed prior to the Tzimtzum when there was no possibility of anything else. After the Tzimtzum, Hashem reveals a measured form of infinite light so that we won't be overwhelmed by it, but that we can draw it down into our lives. The tzaddikim associate the Torah with the Kav. The fact that there's a Torah in the world, that's the reintroduction of the infinite light back into the world. And so we have infinite light, the removal of the infinite light so that there can be the appearance of a space that's devoid of that infinite light. And then right away, there's a ray of that original infinite light that comes back down into the Chalal HaPanui. And that ray of infinite light, which is the same potency as the original light, but now it's the miracle of it being contained in a kav, in a midah, that becomes the source of all of the eventual worlds that are going to take shape in the Chalal HaPanui, which becomes the Seder HaHishtalshlus, the process of the...
Could be anything else but Torah. What else could it be?
The Kav or Ein-Sof?
Yeah.
It's the light of godliness. It's Dveikus. It's the Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. It's the Shem Havaya. And the Torah is ultimately the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
That's why it's only Torah. There's no other Shita. Or is there another Shita?
Torah is the revelation. I mean, there's the, we'll see what happens in the Halal as we get to the worlds that now come about. But you're absolutely right. The Kav or Ein Sof, the only place that we find that infinitude, something that's infinite, is the Torah. Also the soul. There's what to say about the soul also representing the Kav. That Tzemach Tzedek says that when a person is wearing their tefillin, they should have the kavanah that the Kav or Ein Sof is being yored down into their neshama. And the Ramchal talks about this very much as well. That there's always going to be two ways in which the light of Hashem comes down into existence. Nishmas Yisrael and the Torah of Yisrael. As the Zohar Kadosh says, that plus Kishrin, da b'da, there are three things that are fundamentally intertwined and unified with one another, which is Kudshavarichu, Oraisa, v'Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Torah, and Bnei Yisrael. Because the way that Hashem reveals himself back into the world is either through our souls or through the Torah itself. And what we'll see next week is that, okay, so we have the Or Ein Sof that was Tzimtzum, the emergence of the Chalal HaPanui, and the re-entrance of an array of infinite light, which is going to become the source of all of the worlds. What we'll discuss next week are going to be the spheros, the worlds, the parts of the souls, how this all aligns to ideas called partsufim, and we'll come to see how a lot of these scary terms that seem far out are really very basic principles to help us understand just what it means to be a human being.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay,
this was a very, very, very important shiur.
We're going to go from the Aleph, we're going to build up to the top so that when we go back to the Svarim, we'll know exactly what they were talking about. Okay,
Thank you so much.
I'll see you next week.
Thank you.